Yo, my peoples, what's up? My name is Jason and I'm from the Shelf Stories YouTube channel. And today I'm going to Dice Tower to review Red Rising. Red Rising is the latest from Stonemaier Games. It is a 1-to-6 player card game in the gin rummy style. You're going to be discarding, drawing, and crafting the best hand that you can, but with a lot more gamer elements that I will get to in just a second. Also, it is based on the Red Rising book series, young adult sci-fi about a dystopian future, brings in an element of that game, of that series into the game. Without further ado, let's go to the videotape and I will show you Red Rising. Welcome to a game of Red Rising. I have a 3-player game laid out. So this game does go from 1 to 6. I will be explaining the solo rules after I explain the multiplayer rules. The other thing to note is that you might observe some of these metallic pieces right here, very snazzy. I was provided that by Stonemaier Games for this review. If you want the collector's edition, you think you can get it from the Stonemaier Games website specifically, but there is a retail edition with downgraded components, but the same core gameplay. So the first thing you're going to notice about Red Rising is that there are a lot of cards, tons of them. Look at the size of that center deck. There are 112 cards total here across 15 different suits, and they all have text. Every single card has unique text that you need to ingest before you're able to play. So that's very overwhelming if you're either teaching the game to a new player or learning it yourself. I think the easiest way to start is just the idea that at the beating heart of this game, it's a rummy style game. If you've played rummy, you know you have your hand of cards and you're trying to draw and discard until you can optimize your hand and make the best one. Here, you're going to be discarding a card first, firing off a power, and then acquiring one of the cards either from face up or from the top of the deck. And that's the core, discard, draw until you're able to mold your hand how you want. So then point scoring is going to come from 2 general areas. You have the synergies that you're going to create with these cards, either from the points up here, and also you can proc some of these bonuses that are listed on the bottom. Points will also come from the board. When I discard and draw, I'm going to be firing off different sections here, and that will progress certain point scoring elements as well. So if I activate Jupiter, I'm going to move forward on the fleet track. The further I move, the more I score. If I fire off Mars, I'm going to get the helium tokens. Pretty typical gems right there, but a nice little carry case for them. These are worth a couple of points each. If I go to the Institute, I'm going to grow in influence, which are these, well, the function of these cubes. If I have majority here, I'm going to have my points here are going to be worth more, kind of a multiplier effect. So lots of points available. If I go to Luna, Luna gives me the sovereign token, and that introduces the game's asymmetry. So every player is going to have a separate power that generally works off of the sovereign token. So you can go ahead and read that and get familiar with that as you play the game. So I'm a person that learns by doing. So I'll only show you a sample turn. So I have my hand of 5 cards. And I have a card here that says Lawyer. So I noticed that this endgame scoring is if it's paired with a judge, I would get 22 points. So already we're 13, that's not bad, but 13 plus 22 is going to be on the higher end of what cards have to offer. So I happen to see a judge right here and I want it. So I'm going to manipulate my hand to do that. So I'm going to play this Perez over here. She's a blue card. She's a pilot. And I'm going to fire off her power. So her power says advance twice on the fleet track, then all their players advance once on the fleet track. That's fine. So I'm going to put it over here. I just choose whichever lane I want. And then I would move forward on this track, and then everybody else would move along one. That's fine. I would then take this card, put it in my hand. I have now paired the lawyer and the judge. And I would fire off the Mars power, which is a helium token. So I've gotten a couple of little point scoring over here, but also the long-term goal, I've constructed a tiny combo to get this going. And as you can see, you read all the cards, and you're going to try to make this as synergistic as possible. But let's say I was not happy with what was in the offer, so I would instead take a card from the top of the deck, just put it in my hand, and then roll this die and get a random power that matches up with what's offered here. Let's get a little bit closer and talk about the Automa. So, as in any Stonemaier game, you're going to get an Automa from Morton Monrad Pedersen, which is usually a deck of cards. So for the most part, on the player side, you're going to be doing the exact same thing, discarding cards, drawing cards, making your synergies. On the Automa, it is a little bit of a dumb opponent, but a strong opponent. So it's going to acquire lots of cards. It's going to ignore all the text. It's just going to have lots of cards available to it. So an Automa's turn is very simple. You're going to pull from the deck, and you're going to do what it says. So it is going to bring cards out of the central deck and then distribute them out. So that'll be this top line, and then it will acquire one of the cards. And then either it will fire off a power, which is what the star means, or this will be blank and it won't do too much. It depends on what comes out of the deck. So in this particular case, I would bring out a card and put it on B. Or put it on Luna. Sorry about that. And then I would actually acquire the card that is on B. You see D, C, A, B. Those are cards. That's variable. And it would put it in his deck. So because he's a little bit stupid and brutish, he doesn't really care what's on the text, but he will acquire lots and lots of cards. Autumn is actually going to go twice, so I'd actually do that again. So then I would look, and that card would go there. I would acquire the top card on the A deck, and then fire off that power. In this particular case, it's Luna. It doesn't have a character token. It just has this card, which says it just duplicates one of the spaces, which would be moving forward on that track. So going twice a turn, this will grow pretty fat over 20, 30 cards, and you'll count it up at the end of the game. Another thing to consider is this odds and evens card. You will look at the offer at the beginning of the game, see what has more evens or odds. In the particular case, it would be odd. So I would take that, I would put that down here. It will score more points the more odd cards it ends up in its deck. So that gives as a flag for me as a player. Try to deny it odd cards as much as possible. Discard even cards. Manipulate the deck so that I get rid of odd cards. The reason to do so is because this deck will get very fat at the end of the game. It will discard down to 20, only it will discard the non-matching cards. So like it will take all of its even cards, discard them, and then count up whatever's left. So you want to try to deny it odd cards as much as possible. In this particular case, and it's vice versa if the bot is going for even. And that is a solo mode for Red Rising. All right, so there are three components that I want to talk about when it comes to Red Rising. The first is its kind of gamer DNA. So at the very, very heart of this game, I feel, is Gin Rummy. So as I said in the intro, draw, discard, craft your hand, right? And in Gin Rummy, it's so simple. It's like that's all you do. And then once you have the best hand or you're happy with your hand, bang, done. There you go. I have played Gin Rummy my entire life. It was one of the first games I remember playing as a child, playing with my parents and kind of moving on. So just a flag for people. I just have a very big nostalgia core for that kind of gameplay and variance on it. So then another game that is in this line that needs to be talked about is Fantasy Realms. Fantasy Realms is gamer rummy. And it's mentioned in the rule book that this particular design was based on a play of Fantasy Realms. So Fantasy Realms, instead of the 4 suits of regular Gin Rummy, you have your 10 suits, and there's interactions among the suits. So there's fire and water and different things. It's like if you have a fire card and a bunch of green cards, then it's worth however many points. So you're really kind of going for that scoring combo sense. Or if you have these if you have the water card, then all your fire cards are not going to do well. I love that kind of intuitive way that the cards interacted. It wasn't thematic at all, but just it created intuitive little links for me to understand what I'm doing with the scoring. Scoring in Fantasy Realms was very elastic. You could either get a bomb hand because you didn't do that well, or you could just shoot the moon and have like these huge, crazy scores. And it was the same kind of heart: draw on this card, draw on this card, draw on this card, craft your hand. And the game was over at a certain point, but it didn't take that long for Fantasy Realms to be over. Okay, now we get to Red Rising. And you'll hear the comparison made a lot between Fantasy Realms and Red Rising. I personally like Fantasy Realms a little bit better, but I think Fantasy Realms is an excellent game, like an excellent game. It's definitely one of those games where it's like, if I have company, it's like, oh, you want to play Fantasy Realms? Hey, everybody, I have this game. It's called Fantasy Realms. You see that? I'm always kind of trying to push it. I've been playing Fantasy Realms for years. So it's nice to be able to see it get a little bit more recognition with the recent awards recognition, and also the comparison to this new product. All right, so that's the natural thing, right? Which one is better, Fantasy Realms or Red Rising? And I don't think of it that way. Like, I think of Fantasy Realms as gamer rummy, and I think of Red Rising as Euro gamer rummy. Different flavors. What Fantasy Realms does is amazing. I really dig that game. But, Red Rising kind of stands on its own, I feel, as well. The best thing about Fantasy Realms, the thing that I like the most, not Fantasy Realms, I'm going to confuse that the whole time, right? The best thing about Red Rising that I think happens is that multi-use card, the things that the other games don't give you. The decision space that it creates. And I'm a big multi-use card guy anyway. Love that. But that decision space every single turn of, do I keep this and match this in my set, or do I play it for its power and hope if I want it back that it'll be there for me to get back and what's on the board. But that one, like having that hand and crafting that hand, even with all the buttons, I was still able to get that Jin rummy sense, even with everything going on, even with the board, even with the the tracks and everything. It just I don't feel like the extra stuff took away from the beating core of the game, which is something I've been playing for decades, almost my entire life, and just giving me that decision space of like a draw or discard, a keep or discard. Love that. Two issues that kind of really give me pause. One is, I mentioned about Fantasy Realms that the score is very elastic. Here I found the scores were I'm kind of scoring in the same range as I go from game to game, whether it's multiplayer or solo. I don't know. I feel like the binary, like a lot of the scoring is binary. That you have this and you have to pair it with this, you get extra points. If you don't have it, you don't get the extra points. That's it. In Fantasy Realms, so many more of the cards are like, have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them. Those exist here in Red Rising, but that's not, you might see you go your entire game without having that influencing your score. It's more like if you have this one character, pair it with this other character. It just created a more kind of like sealed in system, and I like the free-flowing nature of the previous game a little bit better. So that's one. Two, in terms of that kind of sealed system feeling, is that once you get your decent hand, and you might get it pretty early, you go to that top deck thing. Top deck. Ooh, I feel like the Euro-inspired design of the game says, what does a Euro player kind of tend to not like the most, which is not having the space in the game to do their thing, to get the optimal thing. In other games, fire for combo, but in this game, it's kind of like just build the optimal hand that you can. So this game does not want to be able to give players the option of like, okay, I finished my hand, I'm done, let's go. So they kind of put in this, I guess, hack, a design hack, and I just don't feel like that was the way to do it. I feel like, I want games to be snappier. Like, I like the original. Like, what is wrong with that? What is wrong with, like, I'm done. And if you don't feel like you did your thing, play again. If the game is short enough. And I don't know. It just feels like this game wants to overstay its welcome, to give that one last player a chance to fill out their hand. I don't think that was well handled. I don't think that the conception is great. So I kind of took away from the experience for me mechanically, even though the core I thought was fun. Thematically, I'm very excited about this game. And that's weird to say because most of the reviews that I see or read on BGG and different places, that this is a themeless game. I get it. This game will not pull you in. This game will not immerse you into anything. There's no story there's not even text. It doesn't even explain what helium is or the flight track is. You got to fill all that stuff in yourself. Or if you can't, or ignore it. Like everything is red, blue, gold, or whatever. And a lot of people are saying that this is just a purely themeless product. What is it doing there to disappoint me? Because I want to play in the Red Rising universe for whatever reason. I guess I don't really come at it that way. A thematic game is a thematic game, and an immersive game is an immersive game. And I love that stuff. I don't need every game to immerse me for me to enjoy it. What Red Rising does is what I call evokes the theme. It's not immersive thematic, it's evocative thematic. It lays out dots, and you connect the dots with your knowledge. Do you know the books? Great, you have greater connections, but you don't have to know the books. You just have to know stratified society and, reds and blues and greens. And the greens are newspaper, reporters, and the blues are pilots. And the game gives you enough to kind of just put the pieces together yourself based on just general sci-fi knowledge or fantasy knowledge. And if you want to enjoy the books, go ahead, but at least it's constructing this world. If there's a promise there that there's a world behind it, it's almost like it's showing you a door, but it's not telling you anything about what's behind it. It's just tantalizing you with this door. What it reminded me of, and I have read the books, I read them a long time ago, and I picked up a book again after I played this. It reminded me there's this one particular scene in Red Rising where the main character kind of sees the whole city for the first time. The whole society is kind of mapped out for him for the first time. And it's just kind of this striking moment in the book. Fleeting, doesn't really happen too long, but when you first are introduced to that hierarchical society, people running around, people doing this, the reds are down here, the gold's up there, and everything in between. I feel like this game gives you that one snapshot. It doesn't do anything past that. You got to do it yourself, but I'm okay with that. I'm okay with being fed ingredients and cooking my own meals. I don't need the meals cooked for me every time. Having somebody cook for me the meals is great, but I don't need that every single time from every single product. I'm very much a fan that Red Rising consciously went a different direction, and I thought it was well delivered. I enjoyed it. I'll mention about the solo mode now. I love the solo mode. It is so well delivered. Morten Monrad Pedersen and the Automa Factory, everybody who helps him is just aces. You could tell that they're kind of improving their craft as they make more Automas for more and more games. It's simple, doesn't take much to learn, doesn't take much to run, and also it knows what the core points of interaction are to make my decision space matter, but not with a lot of admin where I'm running the bot. I don't do a lot of running of the bot. I'm just worried about what it's going to do to me. I'm worried about if it is going to take cards that I put down and maybe they take the bigger scoring. Like if it's scoring for odd cards, I want to put down even cards. It's going to mess with the tableau. It's going to put out better cards for me because it's milling the deck itself. Fantastic. Easy. I love that combination of easy and knowing where it's going to affect me. Chef's kiss. I love the solo. So I'm going to go pretty high on this one. It could go even higher, but those mechanical things kind of took that one down for me. And I really have to put it out there that the reason I'm going this score is because I like Rummy. I like Rummy games, and I like this game just gives me that sense. I love the basic card play, and some of the combos were cool. The scoring inelasticity and the way that the game kind of lasts too long, and I don't think the game handled that issue very well, kind of brings it a little bit down. But you see my future videos, Red Rising will be right there for the next little while. I like showing off my IP games because that's kind of my thing. So yeah, I really liked it. Maybe more than most, but we're all different. That's what's great about watching multiple reviews, getting multiple opinions so that you can find what's fun for you. If you enjoy my content, please visit my channel on Shelf Stories. Shelf Stories is my channel where I engage in stories. I do book chats. I do book reviews every once in a while. I may just call up a couple of friends who I know have read it, and we'll talk about Red Rising, the book series. And other things like history and culture and a lot of stuff that's above the table, but I find fun and interesting. I love discussion. So if you wanted to stop by, say hi, leave a comment, I'd really appreciate it. If you could change your mind, you could change the world. So until next time, later, everybody.